he, hu, he, ha, ha, hu, he, he, hu, hu. Can people hear me? Can people hear me? Am I hearable? Can you hear me? Then I can answer your jumper questions. Oh, I'm all good. So I had to restart the stream again. Something's up with my mic. Google Chrome is using your microphone. That's all right. No problem. Whatever. I think we're good now. Right. Okay, we are good to start. Let's get this up. Well, good evening, one and all. We've switched from the link 5 minutes ago because it went wrong again. Hopefully, people will find their way in. It is day 6 of the 2-month read all of the Bible in lockdown, redeem the times. We're asking these 2 questions. If you want to know why, well, you can't look at the link below because I put the links below on the address that just had a sound malfunction. So I'll put it up after. All you need to know is these are 2 important questions that we should always be asking whenever the Bible is open. And we are in Genesis chapter 47. Chris Williams wants to know why I'm wearing a jumper. Because, Chris, I'm a cold cat. In 30 seconds, we shall begin day 6 of the Bible Hour. Welcome on in. Bible's open, Genesis chapter 47. Not long till my favorite character in the whole Bible, apart from maybe one, arrives. Genesis 47, verse 13. Others will come on in after. Good news is lots of people are watching this after it's live. It is Good Friday, April 2020. Psalm 22 sums up the events of that sober day. Verse 13 of Genesis 47. This is the word of the Lord. Ship in the famine. Meanwhile, the famine became so severe that all the food was used up and people were starving throughout the lands of Egypt and Canaan. By selling grain to the people, Joseph eventually collected all the money in Egypt and Canaan, and he put the money in Pharaoh's treasury. When the people of Egypt and Canaan ran out of money, all the Egyptians came to Joseph. "Our money is gone," they cried, "but please give us food, or we will die before your very eyes." Joseph replied, "Since your money is gone, bring me your livestock. I will give you food in exchange for your livestock." So they brought their livestock to Joseph in exchange for food. In exchange for their horses, flocks of sheep and goats, and herds of cattle and donkeys, Joseph provided them with food for another year. But that year ended, and the next year they came again and said, "We cannot hide the truth from you, my lord. Our money is gone, and all our livestock and cattle are yours. We have nothing left to give but our bodies and our land. Why should we die before your very eyes? Buy us and our land in exchange for food. We offer our land and ourselves as slaves for Pharaoh. Just give us grain so that we may live and not die, and so the land does not become empty and desolate." So Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. All the Egyptians sold him their fields because the famine was so severe, and soon all the land belonged to Pharaoh. As for the people, he made them all slaves, from one end of Egypt to the other. The only land he did not buy was the land belonging to the priests. They received an allotment of food directly from Pharaoh so that they didn't need to sell their land. Then Joseph said to the people, "Look, today I have bought you and your land for Pharaoh. I will provide you with seed so you can plant the fields. Then, when you harvest it, 1/5 of your crop will belong to Pharaoh. You may keep the remaining 4/5 as seed for your fields and as food for you, your households, and your little ones." "You have saved our lives," they exclaimed. "May it please you, my lord, to let us be Pharaoh's servants." Joseph then issued a decree in effect in the land of Egypt that Pharaoh should receive 1/5 of all the crops grown on his land. Only the land belonging to the priests was not given to Pharaoh. Meanwhile, the people of Israel settled in the region of Goshen in Egypt. There they acquired property and they were fruitful, and their population grew rapidly. Jacob lived for 17 years after his arrival in Egypt, so he lived 147 years in all. As the time of his death grew near, Jacob called for his son Joseph and said to him, "Please do me this favor. Put your hand under my thigh and swear that you will treat me with unfailing love by honoring this last request. Do not bury me in Egypt. When I die, please take my body out of Egypt and bury me with my ancestors." So Joseph promised, "I will do as you ask." "Swear that you will do it," Jacob insisted. So Joseph gave his oath, and Jacob bowed humbly at the head of his bed. Genesis chapter 48. Jacob blesses Manasseh and Ephraim. One day, not long after this, word came to Joseph, "Your father is failing rapidly." So Joseph went to visit his father, and he took him and his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. When Joseph arrived, Jacob was told, "Your son Joseph has come to see you." So Jacob gathered his strength and sat up in his bed. Jacob said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me." You remember that event? It was God Almighty. "He said to me, I will make you fruitful and will multiply your descendants. I will make you a multitude of nations. And I will give this land of Canaan to your descendants after you as an everlasting possession. Now, I am claiming as my own sons these two boys of yours, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born here in the land of Egypt before I arrived. They will be my sons, just as Reuben and Simeon are. But any children born to you in the future will be your own, and they will inherit land within the territories of their brothers Ephraim and Manasseh. Long ago, as I was returning from Paddan Aram, Rachel died in the land of Canaan. We were still on the way some distance from Ephrath, that is, Bethlehem. So with great sorrow I buried her there beside the road to Ephrath. Then Jacob looked over at the two boys. Are these your sons? He asked. Yes, Joseph told him. These are the sons God has given me here in Egypt. And Jacob said, bring them closer to me so that I can bless them. Jacob was half blind because of his age, and he could hardly see. So Joseph brought the boys close to him, and Jacob kissed and embraced them. Then Jacob said to Joseph, I never thought I would see your face again, but now God has let me see your children too. Joseph moved the boys, who were at their grandfather's knees, and he bowed with his face to the ground. Then he positioned the boys in front of Jacob. With his right hand, he directed Ephraim toward Jacob's left hand, and with his left hand, he put Manasseh at Jacob's right hand. But Jacob crossed his arms and reached out to lay his hands on the boys' heads. He put his right hand on the head of Ephraim, though he was a younger boy, and he put his left hand on the head of Manasseh, though he was the firstborn. Then he blessed Joseph. This is one of my favorites, by the way, in the Bible. Then he blessed Joseph and said, may the God before whom my grandfather Abraham and my father Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this very day, the angel, yes, who has redeemed me from all harm, may he bless these boys. Just pause there, because that angel was not long to assume flesh once and for all through Mary, and today we remember that same angel crucified for sinners. May they preserve my name and the names of Abraham and Isaac, and may their descendants multiply greatly throughout the earth. But Joseph was upset when he saw that his father placed his right hand on Ephraim's head. So Joseph lifted it to move it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. No, my father, he said, this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head. But his father refused. I know, my son, I know, he replied. Manasseh will also become a great people, but his younger brother will become even greater, and his descendants will become a multitude of nations. So Jacob blessed the boys that day with this blessing. The people of Israel will use your names when they give a blessing. They will say, may God make you as prosperous as Ephraim and Manasseh. In this way, Jacob put Ephraim ahead of Manasseh. Then Jacob said to Joseph, look, I am about to die, but God will be with you and will take you back to Canaan, the land of your ancestors. And beyond what I have given your brothers, I am giving you an extra portion of the land that I took from the Amorites with my sword and bow. Genesis chapter 49, Jacob's last words to his sons. Then Jacob called together all his sons and said, gather around me, and I will tell you what will happen to each of you in the days to come. Come and listen, you sons of Jacob. Listen to Israel, your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my strength, the child of my vigorous youth. You are first in rank and first in power. But you are as unruly as a flood, and you will be first no longer. For you went to bed with my wife, you defiled my marriage couch. Simeon and Levi are two of a kind. Their weapons are instruments of violence. May I never join in their meetings. May I never be a party to their plans. For in their anger they murdered men, and they crippled oxen just for sport. Who would call their boy Levi? A curse on their anger, for it is fierce. A curse on their wrath, for it is cruel. I will scatter them among the descendants of Jacob. I will disperse them throughout Israel. Can I just say that Levi and that tribe does get a lot better? Judah, your brothers will praise you. You will grasp your enemies by the neck. All your relatives will bow before you. Judah, my son, is a young lion that has finished eating its prey. Like a lion, he crouches and lies down. Like a lioness, who dares to rouse him? The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from his descendants, until the coming of the one to whom it belongs, the one whom all the nations will honor. He ties his foal to a grapevine, the colt of his donkey to a choice vine. He washes his clothes in wine, his robes in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth are whiter than milk. Zebulun will settle by the seashore and will be a harbor for ships. His borders will extend to Sidon. Issachar is a sturdy donkey resting between two saddle packs. When he sees how good the countryside is and how pleasant the land, he will bend his shoulder to the load and submit himself to hard labor. Dan will govern his people like any other tribe in Israel. Dan will be a snake beside the road, a poisonous viper along the path that bites the horse's hooves so its rider is thrown off. I trust in you for salvation, O Lord. Gad will be attacked by marauding bands, but he will attack them when they retreat. Asher will dine on rich foods and produce food fit for kings. Naphtali is a doe set free that bears fruitful fawns. Joseph is the foal of a wild donkey, the foal of a wild donkey at a spring, one of the wild donkeys on the ridge. Archers attacked him savagely. They shot at him and harassed him, but his bow remained taut and his arms were strengthened by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob, by the shepherd, the rock of Israel. May the God of your father help you. May the Almighty bless you with the blessings of the heavens above, and blessings of the watery depths below, and blessings of the breasts and womb. May my fatherly blessings be upon you, surpass the blessings of my ancestors, reaching to the heights of the eternal hills. May these blessings rest on the head of Joseph, who is a prince among his brothers. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf, devouring his enemies in the morning and dividing his plunder in the evening. These are the 12 tribes of Israel. And that is what their father said as he told his sons goodbye. He blessed each one with an appropriate message. Jacob's death and burial. Then Jacob instructed them, "Soon I will die and join my ancestors. Bury me with my father and grandfather in the cave in the field of Ephron, the Hittite. This is the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre in Canaan that Abraham bought from Ephraim the Hittite as a permanent burial site. There, Abraham and his wife Sarah are buried. There, Isaac and his wife Rebekah are buried, and there I buried Leah. It is the plot of land and the cave that my grandfather Abraham bought from the Hittites. When Jacob had finished this charge to his sons, he drew his feet into the bed, breathed his last, and joined his ancestors in death. Genesis chapter 50. Joseph threw himself on his father and wept over him and kissed him. Then Joseph told the physicians who served him to embalm his father's body, so Jacob was embalmed. The embalming process took the usual 40 days, and the Egyptians mourned his death for 70 days. When the period of mourning was over, Joseph approached Pharaoh's advisors and said, "Please do me this favor and speak to Pharaoh on my behalf. Tell him that my father made me swear on oath. He said to me, 'Listen, I am about to die. Take my body back to the land of Canaan and bury me in the tomb I prepared for myself. So please allow me to go and bury my father. After his burial, I will return without delay.'" Pharaoh agreed to Joseph's request. "Go and bury your father as he made you promise," he said. So Joseph went up to bury his father. He was accompanied by all of Pharaoh's officials, all the senior members of Pharaoh's household, and all the senior officers of Egypt. Joseph also took his entire household and his brothers and their households. But they left their little children and flocks and herds in the land of Goshen. A great number of chariots and charioteers accompanied Joseph. When they arrived at the threshing floor of Atad, near the Jordan River, they held a very great and solemn memorial service with a 7-day period of mourning for Joseph's father. The local residents, the Canaanite, watched the mourning at the threshing floor of Atad. Then they renamed the place, which is near the Jordan, Abel Mizraim, for they said, "This is the place of deep mourning for these Egyptians." So Jacob's sons did as he commanded them. They carried his body to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre. This is the cave that Abraham had bought as a permanent burial site from Ephraim the Hittite. Joseph reassures his brothers. After burying Jacob, Joseph returned to Egypt with his brothers and all who had accompanied him to his father's burial. But now that their father was dead, Joseph's brothers became fearful. "Now Joseph will show his anger and pay us back for all the wrong that we have done to him," they said. So they sent this message to Joseph. "Before your father died, he instructed us to say to you, 'Please forgive your brothers for the great wrong they did to you, for the sin in treating you so cruelly. So we, the servants of the God of your father, beg you to forgive our sin.'" When Joseph received the message, he broke down and wept. Then his brothers came and threw themselves before Joseph. "Look, we are your slaves," they said. But Joseph replied, "Don't be afraid of me. Am I God that I can punish you? You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. He brought me to this position so that I could save the lives of many people. No, don't be afraid. I will continue to take care of you and of your children." So he reassured them by speaking kindly to them. I think the King James Version best writes that famous verse. 20. Read it up later. The death of Joseph. So Joseph and his brothers and their families continued to live in Egypt. Joseph lived to the age of 110. He lived to see 3 generations of descendants of his son Ephraim, and he lived to see the birth of the children of Manasseh's son Machir, who he claimed as his own. Soon I will die, Joseph told his brothers, but God will surely come to help you and lead you out of this land of Egypt. He will bring you back to the land that he solemnly promised to give to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear an oath, and he said, when God comes to help you and lead you back, you must take my bones with you. So Joseph died at the age of 110. The Egyptians embalmed him, and his body was placed in a coffin in Egypt. The end of the book of Genesis. We enter now one of Owen's favourite books in the Bible and one of the most Jesus-centered works of Moses. And you cannot understand the New Testament, especially things like communion and the death and resurrection of Jesus, without this book of Exodus. So excited about this. Exodus chapter 1. I don't know if the admins can quickly post on YouTube and Facebook, we are starting Exodus now. You've still got 30 minutes. We haven't got 30 minutes. There's 30 minutes left. You've got like 10 seconds to come and join us as Exodus begins. The rest of us will just have a little drink, grab some cheese or something. Other than the evening slots here at 9 o'clock, thank you, admin, legend. We have a Resurrection Sunday 6 p.m. service. Say something controversial but true, like Owen says you can't understand Jesus unless you understand Moses, and post that. And then when they come back and say, what are you talking about? Just say that's exactly what Jesus said. You can't understand him unless you understand Moses. And now Moses has just come on the scene, except he's been on the scene since all of Genesis because he wrote it. Right, I'll start. Exodus chapter 1. The Israelites in Egypt. These are the names of the sons of Israel, that is, Jacob, who moved to Egypt with their father, each with his family. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. In all, Jacob had 70 descendants in Egypt, including Joseph, who was already there. In time, Joseph and all of his brothers died, ending that entire generation. But their descendants, the Israelites, had many children and grandchildren. In fact, they multiplied so greatly that they became extremely powerful and filled the land. Eventually, a new king came to power in Egypt who knew nothing about Joseph or what he had done. He said to his people, look, the people of Israel now outnumber us and are stronger than we are. We must make a plan to keep them from growing even more. If we don't, and if war breaks out, then we will join our enemies and fight. Then they will join our enemies and fight against us. Then they will escape from the country. So the Egyptians made the Israelites their slaves. They appointed brutal slave drivers over them, hoping to wear them down with the crushing labor. They forced them to build the cities of Pithom and Ramesses as supply centers for the king. But the more Egyptians oppressed them, the more that the Israelites multiplied and spread, and the more alarmed the Egyptians became. So the Egyptians worked the people of Israel without mercy. They made their lives bitter, forcing them to mix mortar and make bricks and do all the work in the fields. They were ruthless in all their demands. Then Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, gave this order to the Hebrew midwives, Shiphrah and Puah. When you help the Hebrew women as they give birth, watch as they deliver. If the baby is a boy, kill him. If it is a girl, let her live. But because the midwives feared God, they refused to obey the king's orders. They allowed the boys to live as well. That echoes Herod at the birth of Jesus, and a bit like World War II and the concentration camps. So the king of Egypt called for the midwives. "Why have you done this?" he demanded. "Why have you allowed the boys to live?" "The Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women," the midwives replied. "They are more vigorous and have their babies so quickly that we cannot get there in time." So God was good to the midwives, and the Israelites continued to multiply, growing more and more powerful. And because the midwives feared God, he gave them families of their own. Then Pharaoh gave this order to all of his people: throw every newborn Hebrew boy into the Nile River, but you may let the girls live. Exodus chapter 2. The birth of Moses. About this time, a man and woman from the tribe of Levi got married. The woman became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She saw that he was a special baby and kept him hidden for 3 months. When she could no longer hide him, she got a basket made of papyrus reeds and waterproofed it with tar and pitch. She put the baby in the basket and laid it among the reeds along the bank of the river Nile. The baby's sister then stood at a distance, watching to see what would happen to him. Soon, Pharaoh's daughter came down to bathe in the river, and her attendants walked along the riverbank. When the princess saw the basket among the reeds, she sent her maid to go and get it for her. When the princess opened it, she saw the baby. The little boy was crying, and she felt sorry for him. "This must be one of the Hebrew children," she said. Then the baby's sister approached the princess. "Should I go and find one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" she asked. "Yes, do," the princess replied. So the girl went and called the baby's mother. "Take this baby and nurse him for me," the princess told the baby's mother. "I will pay you for your help." So the woman took her baby home and nursed him. Later, when the boy was older, his mother brought him back to Pharaoh's daughter, who adopted him as her own son. The princess named him Moses, for she explained, "I lifted him out of the water." Moses escapes to Midian. Many years later, when Moses had grown up, he went out to visit his own people, the Hebrews, and he saw how hard they were being forced to work. During his visit, he saw an Egyptian beating one of his fellow Hebrews. After looking in all directions to make sure that no one was watching, Moses killed the Egyptian and hid the body in the sand. The next day, when Moses went out to visit his people again, he saw 2 Hebrew men fighting. "Why are you beating up your friend?" Moses said to the one who had started the fight. The man replied, "Who appointed you to be our prince and judge? Are you going to kill me as you killed that Egyptian yesterday?" Then Moses was afraid, thinking, "Everyone knows what I did." And sure enough, Pharaoh heard what had happened, and he tried to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in the land of Midian. When Moses arrived in Midian, he sat down beside a well. Now, the priest of Midian had 7 daughters who came as usual to draw water and fill the water troughs for their father's flocks. But some other shepherds came and chased them away. So Moses jumped up and rescued the girls from the shepherds. Then he drew water for their flocks. When the girls returned to Reuel, their father, he asked, "Why are you back so soon today?" "An Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds," they answered, "and then he drew water for us and watered our flocks." "Then where is he?" their father asked. "Why did you leave him there?" Then where is he? Their father asked, same voice. "Why did you leave him there? Invite him to come and eat with us." Moses accepted the invitation and he settled there with him. In time, Reuel gave Moses his daughter Zipporah to be his wife. Zipporah, of course, has a holy day with the Egyptian Coptic Church. We'll see why soon. Later, at least I think it's the Egyptian Coptic Church. Later, she gave birth to a son, and Moses named him Gershom, for he explained, "I have been a foreigner in a foreign land." Years passed and the king of Egypt died, but the Israelites continued to groan under their burden of slavery. They cried out for help, and their cry rose up to God. God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He looked down on the people of Israel and knew it was now time to act. Church has the living God hearing her cries. Exodus chapter 3, Moses and the burning bush. Now remember this story because other parts of the Bible refers back to the Lord here. One day, Moses was tending the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led the flock far into the wilderness and came to Sinai, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the middle of a bush. Moses stared in amazement. Though the bush was engulfed in flames, it didn't burn it up. "This is amazing," Moses said to himself. "Why isn't that bush burning up? I must go and see it." Then the Lord saw Moses coming to take a closer look. God called to him from the middle of the bush, "Moses, Moses." This divine angel, he's always getting involved with his church. "Here I am," Moses replied. "Do not come any closer," the Lord warned. "Take off your sandals, for you are standing on holy ground. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." When Moses heard this, he covered his face because he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord told him, I have certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries of distress because of their harsh slave drivers. Yes, I am aware of their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians and lead them out of Egypt into their own fertile and spacious land. Heaven, heaven on earth. And it is a land flowing with milk and honey. The land where the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites now live. Look, the cry of the people of Israel has reached me, and I have seen how harshly the Egyptians abuse them. Now go, for I am sending you to Egypt. You must lead my people out of Egypt. It's great in Hebrews, isn't it, where it basically says all the ancient church knew the actual geographical land was just a picture of the heavenly Zion, which they were looking forward to. That's why they never really built proper buildings there. It's just passing. It's just a picture of what's coming. God answered, I will. But Moses protested to God, verse 11. Who am I to appear before Pharaoh? Who am I to lead the people out of Egypt? God answered, I will be with you. And this is your sign that I am the one who has sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God at this very mountain. But Moses protested, if I go to the people of Israel and tell them the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, they will ask me, what is his name? Then what should I tell them? God replied to Moses, I am who I am. Say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. Now, just pause there, because you know full well in the New Testament who starts saying he is the I am who existed before Abraham, but there is a key part of the ancient church life. This Lord is going to bring his church to worship God at a big mountain. That's the whole purpose of this Exodus. Get the church to meet the Father, and the angel is going to lead them. The New Testament says that as well, doesn't it? He led them all the way there, and they drank from the rock, and it was Christ, and he was with them in the wilderness, and all that stuff. But remember that the Son of God always leads his church to meet the Father. You cannot meet the Father unless it's through the Son. And if you ever meet anyone that says Jesus wasn't active until the New Testament, then number one, punch them in the face, and then correct them and say, what are you talking about, thinking you could ever approach the Father not through the Son? What kind of crazy Christianity is that? It's not Christianity. So here is the I am saying we're going to meet God at the mountain. Honestly, that's one of the best bits. That is classic church theology, which at Park End we're trying to draw out every single week. That is why we're Jesus-centered. Come on. God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel, Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my eternal name, my name to remember for all generations. Now go and call together the elders of Israel. Tell them, Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has appeared to me. He told me, I have been watching closely, and I see how the Egyptians are treating you. I have promised to rescue you from your oppression in Egypt. I will lead you to a land flowing with milk and honey, the land where the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites now live. Another thing to tell any religion that thinks God is Unitarian and not Trinitarian is to read Moses properly, because this angel of the Lord is repeatedly called divine, and people see him face to face. We're going to see that a lot in this text. They see God face to face, but yet there's another God who you cannot see face to face. And then there's another God called the Spirit that like fires people up to get doing arts and crafts and build the temple and stuff. This is Moses. 18, I think. The elders of Israel will accept your message. Then you and the elders must go to the king of Egypt and tell them, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. So please let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord God. 3 days. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless a mighty hand forces him. So I will I will raise my hand and strike the Egyptians, performing all kinds of miracles among them. Then at last he will let you go. And I will cause the Egyptians to look favorably on you. They will give you gifts when you go, so you will not leave empty-handed. Every Israelite woman will ask for articles of silver and gold and fine clothing from her Egyptian neighbors and from the foreign women of their houses. You will dress your sons and daughters with these, stripping the Egyptians of their wealth. We have passed the third. So take a minute. We're on the home straight. Should we just stay here all night tonight until we finish Exodus? The Bible's 6 hour. Exodus chapter 4. Signs of the Lord's power. But Moses protested again. What if they won't believe me or listen to me? What if they say, the Lord never appeared to you? Then the Lord asked him, what is that in your hand? A shepherd's staff, Moses replied. Throw it down on the ground, the Lord told him. So Moses threw down the staff, and it turned into a snake, and Moses jumped back. Then the Lord told him, reach out and grab its tail. So Moses reached out and grabbed it, and it turned back into a shepherd's staff in his hand. Perform this sign, the Lord told him. Then they will believe that the Lord, the God of their ancestors, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and of Jacob, really has appeared to you. Then the Lord said to Moses, now put your hands inside your cloak. So Moses put his hand inside his cloak, and when he took it out again, his hand was white as snow with a severe skin disease. Now put your hand back into your cloak, the Lord said. So Moses put his hand back in, and when he took it out again, it was as healthy as the rest of his body. The Lord said to Moses, if they do not believe you and are not convinced by the first miraculous sign, they will be convinced by the second sign. And if they don't believe you or listen to you, even after these 2 signs, then take some water from the river Nile and pour it out on dry ground. When you do, the water from the Nile will turn to blood on the ground. But Moses pleaded with the Lord, "O Lord, I'm not very good with words. I never have been. I'm not now, even though you have spoken to me. I get tongue-tied and my words get tangled." Then the Lord asked Moses, "Who makes a person's mouth? Who decides whether people speak or do not speak? Hear or do not hear? See or do not see? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will be with you as you speak, and I will instruct you in what to say." But Moses again pleaded, "Lord, please send someone else." Then the Lord became angry with Moses. "All right," he said. "What about your brother Aaron, the Levite? I know he speaks well. And look, he is on his way to meet you now. He will be delighted to see you. Talk to him and put words in his mouth. I will be with both of you as you speak, and I will instruct you both in what to do. Aaron will be your spokesman to the people. He will be your mouthpiece, and you will stand in the place of God for him, telling him what to say. And take your shepherd's staff with you and use it to perform the miraculous signs that I have shown you." Moses returns to Egypt. So Moses went back home to Jethro, his father-in-law. "Please let me return to my relatives in Egypt," Moses said. "I don't even know if they are still alive." "Go in peace," Jethro replied. Before Moses left Midian, the Lord said to him, "Return to Egypt, for all those who wanted to kill you have died." Remember Jethro, because you know it, don't you, in Deuteronomy 1, where Moses is having that panic pastoral moment, and he recalls when Jethro saved the day, and with that maths algorithm and eldership and deacons and all that stuff. So Moses took his wife and sons, put them on a donkey, and headed back to the land of Egypt. And in his hand, he carried the staff of God. And the Lord told Moses, "When you arrive back in Egypt, go to Pharaoh and perform all the miracles that I have empowered you to do. But I will harden his heart, so he will refuse to let the people go." Isn't that interesting? I will harden their heart. Then, although a few chapters before, he also has said, "They won't believe you at the first sign." Interesting question, that. Who hardened Pharaoh's heart and why? "Then you will tell them, this is what the Lord says. Israel is my firstborn son. I commanded you, let my son go so he can worship me. But since you have refused, I will now kill your firstborn son." On the way to Egypt, at a place where Moses and his family had stopped for the night, the Lord confronted him and was about to kill him. Here comes the saint day. But Moses' wife, Zipporah, took a flint knife and circumcised her son. She touched his feet with the foreskin and said, "Now you are a bridegroom of blood to me." When she said a bridegroom of blood, she was referring to the circumcision. After that, the Lord left him alone. I think sacraments, signs, and practical expressions of faith were pretty important to Zipporah. But more than that, to the Lord Jesus, who was going to kill Moses because he just sort of threw that ritual out the way. "Oh, I don't need to do that. I don't need to obey God." And it's like people who just throw communion away as if it's nothing, or tack it on the end of some 2-hour sermon as if it's nothing. The Lord is almost going to kill one of the finest saints in the history of the church because he's not bothered with sacraments. I loved our church sacrament service, and then we all got shut down with COVID-19. Now the Lord said to Aaron, "Go out into the wilderness to meet Moses." So Aaron went and met Moses at the mountain of God, and he embraced him. Moses then told Aaron everything that the Lord had commanded him to say, and he told him about the miraculous signs that the Lord had commanded him to perform. Then Moses and Aaron returned to Egypt and called all the Israel elders together. Aaron told him everything that the Lord had told Moses, and Moses performed the miraculous signs as they watched. Then the people of Israel were convinced that the Lord had sent Moses and Aaron. When they heard that the Lord was concerned about them and had seen their misery, they bowed down and worshipped. We can get a bit more in Exodus chapter 5. Moses and Aaron speak to Pharaoh. After this presentation to the Israel elders, Moses and Aaron went and spoke to Pharaoh. They told him, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Let my people go so they may hold a festival in my honor in the wilderness." "Is that so?" retorted Pharaoh. "And who is the Lord? Why should I listen to him and let Israel go? I don't know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go." But Aaron and Moses persisted. "The God of the Hebrews has met with us," they declared. "So let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness so that we can offer sacrifices to the Lord our God. If we don't, he will kill us with a plague or with the sword." Pharaoh replied, "Moses and Aaron, why are you distracting the people from their tasks? Get back to work. Look, there are many of your people in the land, and you are stopping them from their work." Making bricks without straw. The same day, Pharaoh sent this order to the Egyptian slave drivers and the Israelite foremen: "Do not supply any more straw for making bricks. Make the people get it themselves. But still require them to make the same number as bricks as before. Don't reduce the quota. They are lazy. That's why they are crying out, 'Let us go and offer sacrifices to our God.' Load them down with more work. Make them sweat. That will teach them to listen to lies." So the slave drivers and foremen went out and told the people, "This is what Pharaoh says. I will not provide any more straw for you. Go and get it yourselves. Find it wherever you can, but you must produce just as many bricks as before." So the people scattered throughout the land of Egypt in search of stubble to use as straw. Meanwhile, the Egyptian slave drivers continued to push hard. "Meet your daily quota of bricks, just as you did when we provided you with straw," they demanded. Then they whipped the Israelite foremen and who they had put in charge of the work crews. "Why haven't you met your quotas either yesterday or today?" they demanded. So the Israelite foreman went to Pharaoh and pleaded with him. "Please don't treat your servants like this," they begged. And it is there. Oh, no, we'll go to the end. "We are given no straw, but the slave drivers still demand make bricks. We are being beaten, but it isn't our fault. Your own people are to blame." But Pharaoh shouted, "You're just lazy. That's why you're saying, 'Let us go and offer sacrifices to the Lord.' Now get back to your work. The straw will be given to you, but you must still produce the full quota of bricks." The Israelite foreman could see that they were in serious trouble when they were told, "You must not reduce the number of bricks you make each day." As they left Pharaoh's court, they confronted Moses and Aaron, who were waiting outside for them. The foreman said to them, "May the Lord judge and punish you for making a stink before Pharaoh and his officials. You have put a sword into their hands, an excuse to kill us." Then Moses went back to the Lord and protested, "Why have you brought all this trouble upon your own people, Lord? Why did you send me? Ever since I came to Pharaoh as your spokesman, he has been even more brutal to your people, and you have done nothing to rescue them. Honest prayers there from the church leaders to their God. Do you remember in, is it Jonah 4? Where the Hebrew of Jonah's prayer, he basically says, God, you've been evil for saving the Ninevites. Evil. That's quite a prayer, and even more so that the Lord actually just answers him back without just killing him. Yep, we can have honest prayers. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I will see you tomorrow at 9 p.m. for more of Mosaic Christological theology.